Good evening, Croydon, and welcome back to In the Loop. Now, we're really privileged to have Johnny Rose just before the commercial break there. This is a really interesting part of the show, and I want as many of you as possible to get involved. This is an opportunity for us to discuss a really important issue out there at the moment in Croydon, and that is the issue of our libraries. And I know that many of you may have read stories in the local media and also in the national press, but I'm specifically interested in Croydon because that's our local patch, although this is a national issue. I'm interested in hearing your views about Croydon and really looking at what the future holds for our libraries in our borough. I'm going to be joined today in this discussion by some esteemed members of our community. In the studio with me, I have Councillor Timothy Godfrey, who is the Labour member for Selhurst Ward, the Shadow Cabinet member for Culture and Sport. I also have Councillor Tim Pollard, who will be joining us on the line. And Councillor Tim Pollard is the Conservative member for Sanderstead Ward, and he's also the Deputy Leader for Communications and Cabinet member for Children, Families and Learning. On Twitter, we also have Michael Castle, who will be tweeting his views. And Michael Castle is a young person from Croydon. And I really welcome, as I said, the opportunity for everybody to get involved in this debate. So whether it's via Twitter or the shout box, which is very busy at the moment and great, do get involved and let us know your thoughts. So initially, I'd like to open this discussion up by posing a question to you. First, Councillor Godfrey. And actually, I shall call you Timothy, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Timothy. Really, I want to start off the debate by asking you, are Croydon's libraries under threat of closure, or is this just a case of political posturing?
The Conservative administration proposed closing 6 of our libraries only about 18 months ago. So I think it's clearly still part of their agenda. And they're currently proposing to privatise the service delivery of the libraries. So the quality of service is under threat, if not the actual closure or sale of the actual buildings.
OK. And I'd like to bring in at this point Councillor Tim Pollard. Councillor Pollard, can you hear us?
I can.
Fantastic. It's great to have you down the line with us today. And I just really want to get your input in this as well. And you've just heard what Councillor Pollard, Timothy, has said in relation to the closure of the libraries. And I'd like to give you the opportunity to respond to that.
Well, no library branches in Croydon are going to be closed. We did consult on that as a possibility about 18 months ago, as Councillor Godfrey says, and the message came back loud and clear from library users that they didn't think that was appropriate, although they accept the financial constraints under which the council now has to operate. So we've gone away, thought again, and come up with another means by which we can save the kind of sums of money that we will need to save to be able to keep the library service going, but do it a different way. And that's the way forward. I think all the branches will stay in public ownership, all of the buildings, but they may well be operated in the future as part of a larger group of either councils or social enterprise or something of that sort, and enable themselves to run more efficiently than a relatively small group of Croydon branches can do.
So, Councillor Pollard, can I just confirm that you're saying that no libraries will close in Croydon?
Yeah, that's correct.
OK. Would you like to respond to that, Councillor Godfrey?
Absolutely. Yeah, the Labour Party in Croydon is fundamentally committed to improving and investing in our libraries, as we did when we were a Labour council in Croydon, when we built new libraries at Ashburton, at Selsdon, initiated Thornton Heath, built a new library at Broad Green. What we're interested in is actually putting the community at the heart of every library, and actually driving through efficiencies that way. So instead of actually having remote management of the libraries from Wandsworth, Greenwich or Hounslow, actually having local people engaging in their local library. Because we saw tens of thousands of people out on the streets signing petitions, marching to save their libraries and to stop the council actually closing their library. And now we have a golden opportunity to actually engage those people directly in running and developing their local library at the heart of their community.
Okay, and going back to the point on consultation, Councillor Pollard, if you will, just for listeners, I'm quite curious as well to find out what the process is and in terms of how locals have been able to get involved and have their say about how libraries should be run and whether they should be closed, etc.
We did a major consultation exercise in the summer of 2011, which involved public meetings at all of the libraries. It involved a major publicity campaign asking people to put forward their views. Branch library users were offered the opportunity to take part in either electronic or paper surveys, or come along to the meetings, indeed, which many hundreds of people, probably 1,000 or more people did. So there were a lot of opportunities for us to hear people's views, and that is why we decided to do something different from the original concept that we had.
Just in relation to public consultation, your predecessor, Councillor Sarah Bashford, I believe that it was quoted that she mentioned that there was some sort of overwhelming desire from the public to privatise Croydon's libraries, but is that actually the case in terms of that consultation?
No, I don't think she ever said that, actually. What she said was that the public quite clearly said that they felt that the time was not yet there where they didn't need as many branch libraries. So branch library users said, no, we want to keep our branch library. As a council, we've got an overarching responsibility, which is to deliver a whole raft of council services within the amount of money that we've got available. And the amount of money that we've got available from the government is in the process of reducing by 28% over 4 years. And that's a huge amount of reduction to take. So we have had to look at every area of service and come up with new ways of delivering those services. The reality is that if we had the choice, we wouldn't have done any of these things. But we do have to live within the means that we have. We can't raise any more money, and we wouldn't want to raise any more money through taxation, because at the moment people are, in a sense, suffering quite enough. So we don't want to impose any extra stresses in terms of additional taxation, but our government funding has decreased very sharply. So we're in a position where we have to find more efficient ways to deliver the services that people rely on.
Timothy, Councillor Pollard there is talking about efficiencies, also spoke about his predecessor, Councillor Bashford. What are your views on this?
I think people in Croydon need to know actually how inefficient Croydon Council is. The libraries and culture budget in Croydon for 2012-13 is £8.856 million, and they only spend £4.187 million on the actual library network. And Labour's approach is to say, well, we need to take out some of those costs from the back office. The council spends £133,000 a year looking after the HR of 113 library staff. It spends a fortune on its IT contracts. It spends £821,000 on facilities management. These are the unacceptable costs, which are actually forcing some of these, forcing the privatisation agenda by the Conservatives. And they've already shut one library, which was the mobile library. And actually, this is what the Conservatives are like. They're not willing to take the hard decisions about taking out those back office costs, and instead they look to degrade the front line. And we've seen over the last 18 months, 2 years, the council halve the number of qualified librarians in our branches. And librarians aren't highly paid. A newly qualified librarian is on £23,500 a year, not even the Croydon average wage. So where are these savings going to come from, and why do they have to come from the front line?
Okay, before I return to questions directly from myself, I want to go to the shout box now, because we've got quite a number of comments from listeners. And the first one is from Croydonian, and this is to Councillor Pollard. I'm just going to read comments at this stage. Croydonian says, Councillor Pollard, you call that a consultation. Who asked for libraries to be sold off? He also adds, or she, run more efficiently. So why can't Croydon Council run them as in previous years? There's a question here about New Addington, but we're going to come on to that in a moment. And also, Tunde has actually asked Councillor Pollard if you could provide an update regarding Upper Norwood Library.
Okay. In terms, I just want to come back on what Councillor Godfrey was saying about not taking tough decisions on back office costs. This Conservative administration has taken out about £75 million worth of efficiencies over the last 6 years. So that's doing the same thing, but £75 million less, entirely by taking out back office and administration costs. So we have actually a very, very good track record in terms of doing that. The fact of the matter is, though, that if you get a larger organisation that is running more branch libraries, I think most people can see that actually, in terms of your central costs, in terms of your cost of IT provision, in terms of your cost of reprocuring future library systems and so on, you'll be able to do it more efficiently per branch library if you've got a larger network. And that's the principle on which most business in this country operates. So actually where the savings will be made is by doing a lot of the future administration across a larger group of branches. But what this isn't, in all probability, is privatisation or selling off the libraries, as people have said. The intention is that all of the library buildings will remain in council ownership. It will not be possible for anyone who runs the libraries in the future to close a branch. They will have to run the branches that we currently have, offering the same standard of service as we currently have in the future. We have 3 bidders left in the process. One of them is a private company, one of them is another council, and one of them is a social enterprise which has been already floated off another council. So actually, in a sense, this is the logical extension of a lot of the shared service provision that's going on across London in all sorts of ways, where councils are getting together to say if 4 or 5 councils operate together in an area, we will get a better deal for our ratepayers than we will if we each individually try and reinvent the wheel on our own.
Councillor, can I just come in there and ask, in terms of the 3 bidders that you say there are to run our library service, can you confirm that one of those is a subsidiary of Lane, the property development company?
That is one of the 3 bidders who remains, yes.
Okay, and they have obviously a deal with yourselves, the council, at the moment, don't they, in terms of the £450 million building? Is that correct?
Not exactly. There is no £450 million building. That's one of those urban myths that's been spread around. What there is Croydon's urban regeneration vehicle, which is a joint venture between ourselves and another part of John Lang's organisation to redevelop a number of sites across Croydon and to use the profits from developing those sites to build the new Council HQ, which is almost completed now. So there is no £450 million building, but what there is a project to develop quite a large number of sites across Croydon and bring them back into all sorts of different types of constructive use.
Okay, questions now back to the shout box, which is very busy tonight, so thank you very much, listeners. My colleague DJ Steve has made a comment and said that libraries has helped the poorest in our society. We need them now more than ever. Croydonian, and I think this is in relation to the question that I just asked, what about the newfangled office block opposite the town hall that's costing us loads? And adds, if they are sold off now, and this is in relation to the libraries, how will they be under council ownership, Councillor Pollard? And what does this have to be run? Why does this have to be run for profit? I just want to come back to Councillor Godfrey, and I know that Labour recently made a pledge and that said that under, if they were back in power, that none of our libraries would close under Labour. How I guess easy, if you like, it is to say things when you're in opposition and to perhaps make promises to voters, but how realistic is that?
It's very realistic because what this is about is as we saw in the 1980s and 1990s when councils, for instance, devolved spending and responsibility for schools under local management of schools, you ended up with more efficient, locally managed and influenced schools. And what we're proposing is local community cooperative trusts which involve people in shaping the service. The staff still employed with the council, so not ripping off the staff, ensuring that local priorities for a library in South Nord or Coulsdon can reflect local needs. They can add in additional services, and we'll be partnering that with them, using some of the very large budget that will still be left to make sure that we actually invest in books, in new IT, in e-readers, in all those things which people want in their libraries, but this council is not willing to ask people. And that stemmed from when the Conservatives were proposing to shut 6 libraries. There was a packed public meeting in Old Coulsdon, and a resident stood up and said, "Why don't you ask? Why don't you ask us as residents how to, what things that we want to see in our local library? You always just consult us when you want to shut something or you want to cut a budget." And so this stems from that. We'll be asking everybody, when we're running the council in 2014, less than 2 years away, how do you want to see your library run, and what services in it do you want added to an excellent traditional book service?
But in relation to that, 2 years, just supposing Labour does get it in 2014, wouldn't these changes already be in place if, for example, the Lane business wins the bid to run our libraries? How are you going to be able to kind of turn that around? And that's a question that's been posed here in the shout box, in terms of, can you actually do a U-turn on this once it's been done?
Absolutely. This is why I wrote on behalf of the Labour opposition on Croydon Council to the 3 bidders to outline our plans and to make sure that they take it into account. And therefore we will take a very robust approach with those bidders, and they will have to implement at a very minimum some of the things we've been talking about, and we will be looking to take the library service at the earliest opportunity back in-house and set up the local community co-operative trusts to reflect local views and opinions.
Okay, one thing that I want to move on to now, and I know that Michael, who is tweeting, this is relevant to him because he is from New Addington, and I want to talk about what's going on with the New Addington hub. Really, I do want some clarification from both of you on this, both councillors, and also, are we suggesting that this is the way forward for libraries in Croydon, this New Addington hub? And that's the moving of the library to this centre. But I understand that this new centre has less books, less stock in there than the original library. So in a way, it's a very much watered down version of a library service. So really, let's start off with yourself, Councillor Pollard. Tell me more about what's happening at New Addington.
Well, New Addington, the area of Central Parade opposite the shops, has been in urgent need of regeneration for many years. A scheme was first put forward by the then Labour Council back in, 2000 or thereabouts, to redevelop that area, and it fell foul of a village green application. A relatively small number of people in New Addington, a tiny handful, were determined to prevent the regeneration of Central Parade and used 1857 village green legislation to prevent it by claiming that part of that site was in fact their village green. Net result was that the regeneration project that Labour had first put forward and then the Conservatives had taken up with great vigour fell. One of the things that was supposed to do was to build a new library service over there, because the library in New Addington was built, I would guess, in the early 60s, and is of the kind of build quality that you got in the early 60s, and is basically falling to bits. So for 2 reasons, we wanted to move the library over to the Co-op building on the other side of Central Parade, which is 100 yards away or so. One of which is that it would then enable us to bring forward a new scheme that respects the village green but also regenerates that side of Central Parade, and would use, including other areas, the area of the current library. And the second of which is because the building was actually quite dilapidated, actually we can offer a better library in the new building than we could in the old building.
Just ask, before you come in, Councillor Godfrey, what's going to happen to the old building? Because there are rumours circulating that it's going to be turned into a Tesco.
One of the things that actually many people in New Addington have been very keen to have is a supermarket in Central Parade. That is useful for a number of reasons, one of which is that it responds to what people say they actually want. And secondly, when you get a supermarket into a development, it's that much easier to finance the development because the supermarket makes a contribution to the costs. So the plan is to redevelop the whole of that side of Central Parade to include rebuilding part of the community facilities, the community centre that's over there, to construct a supermarket, and to rebuild the swimming pool and leisure centre. So the whole thing comes together as a scheme based around a consolidated village green.
And Councillor, have the local residents actually been consulted in detail about how this new library would work for them and whether or not they're going to be happy with this new facility?
Well, I have to say I haven't had any correspondence from anybody complaining about what's happening to the library. What I have had is an awful lot.
Have they been consulted?
Well, the regeneration scheme that we're proposing has been consulted on in various iterations many, many times well over a decade. So it's probably the most over-consulted on scheme that there is. And in fact, what people are telling us now is they would really like us to stop consulting and get on with it and actually build something.
Okay. Sorry, over to you. Just in terms of time, I'm quite conscious that we have 5 minutes left and I want to get everybody's voice heard. So over to you, Councillor Godfrey.
On New Addington, people do need to know the consequences of it's the adult education service is the CALEP building, and that service has been cut back, and the library is basically going in the foyer with some ancillary rooms, as I understand it, upstairs. And basically, this is the council clearing the clearing part of the site so that they can hand it over to Tesco. And I think that's a completely other debate that's needed for New Addington, is the consequence of a Tesco would severely risk what is one of the best high streets in Croydon.
Okay, over now to the shout box. For some reason...
Can I just say that actually the scheme to put a Tesco on Central Parade was a Labour scheme when they were in control of the council.
But you're a Conservative administration, and I don't think you have ever consulted people locally about the economic consequences of building a large Tesco and what it means to local businesses. And there's been lots of studies by the New Economics Foundation and all sorts of organisations. And if you're serious about consultation, which you've clearly shown you haven't because of the way that you answered the previous question about New Addington Library, then actually if local people were willing to take those risks on balance, then I'd be willing to support it, but not until local people have actually been properly consulted and listened to.
Well, the Tesco issue, just to come back here, the Tesco issue is something separate, although it is linked to the library, and perhaps we can explore that in another show. But what I want to do now is go over to the shout box because it is very busy. And right, here we go. A comment from Al. Why is Councillor Pollard not saying what library services we will lift within New Addington? Another Croydon is saying a better library service is a building lobby than in a purpose-built library, really. DJ Steve, why don't Tesco just build a new library instead of yet another store? Gary has said, can everyone please stop shouting? I think that's in the shout box as opposed to the debate that's going on here. Croydonian has said that there's been no correspondence. Have you spoken to or written to anyone? If so, how, Councillor Pollard, how can you over-consult, the question is. Councillor Pollard, do you want to come back on that one?
People in New Addington have been involved in so many consultation exercises on this regeneration project over the years, and it isn't anybody's fault, apart from the people who decided to launch the Village Green application, that we've been in this situation. But what people are saying is that, actually the council has known for many years what people want in that area. They want the swimming pool to be rebuilt to 21st century standards. They want a community centre that they can use. They want a good library, and they would also like to have a supermarket in Central Parade, although which side of the Central Parade that's on, I think people are slightly less worried about.
Just to come in there, again, the whole issue with the supermarket is another topic for another show. I'm quite interested in, obviously, the impact that the changes to libraries are going to have on local people. And I realise that both of you here today, you're representing your political parties. You've had various members of the community getting involved via the shout box. But ultimately, we are concerned not about party politics. We're concerned about the service that we as individuals are going to be left with. Now, unfortunately, time is against us, and it's 7:59. This is clearly a topic that's really important. I can see that via the shout box, and it's a topic that I will be returning to. But Croydon, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Councillor Pollard, Councillor Godfrey, thank you very much. And Michael Castle on Twitter, thank you so much for joining me this evening. And Croydon listeners, join me again next month when I'll be back with another edition of In the Loop. Thank you.